Hello, are you ready to discover the great disasters that have been forgotten on the dusty pages of history? In this video, we will examine 5 major disasters that have deeply affected the history of the world, but are not well known in their consequences. We will bear witness that some of these disasters have come with their consequences until today. Don't forget to watch the video to the end and share with us in the comments what you think about these events. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii. Our first stop is the event where Mount Vesuvius in Italy exploded in 79 BC and destroyed the city of Pompeii. This disaster led to the sudden death of thousands of people, and the city has been preserved to this day, almost like a time capsule. And what about you? Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live in this ancient city? The eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which occurred in Italy on August 24th, 79, caused the ancient Roman city of Pompeii to be engulfed in flames and ashes. This disaster destroyed a large part of the city, causing it to disappear into history. Pompeii, what it was rediscovered in the century. Its underground remains were found in a fairly well-preserved state. The ancient Roman writer Pliny stated that the city was shaken by an earthquake during the explosion. However, since then, no concrete evidence about this earthquake has been obtained. A new study published in the peer-reviewed journal Frontiers in Earth Science has revealed that the earthquake triggered by Vesuvius put an end to the destruction of Pompeii. Focusing on the insult of chaste lovers, the researchers determined through excavations and analysis that these structures collapsed as a result of the earthquake. For example, a stone deposit found under the remains of the walls indicated that the structures were not destroyed in the first stage of the explosion. Scientists have made important findings by comparing the damage here with the impact of the earthquake on historical buildings. In addition, 2 skeletons of men aged in their 50s were removed from the area, and it was observed that the fractures and cracks in the bones bear similarities to the damage also seen in today's earthquakes. It was concluded that their deaths were not directly caused by eruption of the volcano, as the remains of the skeletons were found on top of it, and not under the ashes. A wooden object found next to one of the skeletons suggests that this person was trying to protect himself. Mauro DeVito, co-author of the study, states the following regarding the findings in the insula of chaste lovers. He found strange features that do not match the effects of the volcanic events described in the volcanology literature dedicated to Pompeii. There should have been a different explanation for all this. There is information that Mount Vesuvius erupted at noon and rained small stones and ash on Pompeii for 18 hours. New research shows that people who managed to escape this disaster actually lost their lives as a result of the earthquake triggered by the explosion. Scientists believe that the ash and flowing through the streets of the city brought about the end of Pompeii. The Santorini explosion in the Minoan civilization. A huge explosion that occurred on an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea almost completely destroyed the Minoan civilization. This explosion on the island of Santorini may have also inspired the legend of Atlantis. So what are the facts behind this myth? One of the largest volcanic eruptions during the Holocene epoch, according to the volume of material released, occur on the Greek island of Santorini, traditionally known as Thera. This explosion is considered a very important event in the prehistory of the Aegean and eastern Mediterranean region, with the city of Akrotiri, which was buried about 1,600 years ago in Pompeii, became one of the most important archaeological sites before BC 20. At the beginning of the century, archaeologists assumed that the volcano erupted around 1500 BC during the New Kingdom of Egypt, and they built a date around this assumption. But beginning in the 1970s, advances in radiocarbon dating threw this timeline into chaos, and many experts insist that the explosion took place more than 100 years before this date. Stuart Manning hopes to solve one of the long-standing debates of modern December 2019, combining the available data with the latest statistical analysis. Manning focused on a much lower date range for the eruption. The date range from about 1609 to 1560 BC, during the Second Intermediate Period of Egypt, when the Hyksos, a dynasty of Canaanite origin, controlled Lower Egypt. Although there is no exact date, this finding opens up a debate that has been going on for years. The island of Santorini, traditionally known as Thera, experienced one of the largest volcanic eruptions during the whole epoch, most likely between 1609 and 1560 BC, according to a new analysis. Yellow River floods. Yellow River floods, one of the deadliest natural disasters in Chinese history, led to the deaths of millions of people. These floods caused not only casualties, but also a huge agricultural crisis and a wave of migration. Have you ever thought that a river could be so destructive? May-August 1931, an estimated 3.7 million to 4 million people were killed along the Yellow River in central China. And the flood waves that followed 3 years dropped the death toll includes victims of disease or flood-related famine. What caused this terrible flash flood? The soil in the river basin was baked hard after years so it could not absorb the runoff from record-breaking snows. In the mountains, on top of the meltwater, the monsoon rains were heavy and an incredible 7 typhoons hit central China that summer. As a result, more than 20 million acres of farmland along the Yellow River were flooded. The Yangtze River also burst its banks, killing at least another 145,000 people. From 1928 to 1932, experienced a long drought. The subsequent winter of 1930 was particularly harsh, creating large accumulations of snow and ice in mountainous areas. Early 1931, melting snow, ice flow reached the middle course of the early period of heavy spring rains. Normally, the region experienced 3 periods of high water, summer and autumn respectively. However, in early 1931, there was a single continuous deluge. By June, residents of low-lying areas had been forced to leave their homes for. Weather stations along the Yangtze River reported a total of more than 600 millimeters, 24 inches of rain during the month. Water flowing down the Yangtze has reached its highest level since record in the mid-19th century. That fall, more heavy rains added to the problem, and some rivers did not return to their normal course until November. The floods have inundated about 180,000 square kilometers, 69,498 square miles in area, the size of which is equivalent to England, and half of Scotland or the total of the states of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The high water level recorded at Hankow in Wuhan on August 19th showed water levels 16 meters, 53 feet above average, with the Shanghai bond averaging 17 meters, 56 feet above average. Waterways in most of the country, especially the Yellow River and the Grand, were flooded. The 8 provinces most seriously affected were Hebei, Hunan, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Jiangxi, Hunan, and Shandong. Beyond the core flood zone, it is also flooded as far south as Guangdong, as far north as Manchuria, and as far west as outbreak of the Black Plague. The Black Plague, which ravaged Europe between 1347 and 1300, almost a third of the population. This epidemic has left a profound impact, not only but also on the social and religious structure. So what have been the effects of this deadly epidemic on the modern world? The plague epidemic, also known as the Black, was a devastating epidemic that ravaged Europe in the mid-1300s. In October 1347, the epidemic, when 12 ships from the Black Sea approached the Sicilian port of Messina. When the people approached the ship, they were met with a terrible surprise. Most of the sailors on board were dead, while the living were seriously ill, with black bloating and inflammation from blood. The Great Plague epidemic, known by the names of the bubonic plague, got its famous name, Black Death, from the fact that internal bleeding caused black spots on the skin. There were several types of the disease. The most common type was the so-called bubonic due to the swellings in the groin and armpits. The first symptoms of the epidemic were high fever and death, often came very soon, while the long plague affects the lungs and septicemic plague, which poisons the blood. Microbes get into the blood and kill the patient on the same day. Plague was most likely transmitted first from Asian traders and sold fur filled carrying fleece from Chinese territories in Western Asia. In 1347, the Crimean Tatars besieged the Genoese port, today Theodosia, where many Italian merchants lived on the Crimean coast, north of the Black Sea. Kipchak chieftain who tried to use the epidemic that his people had caught as leverage, ordered his men to throw plague corpses through the walls with a catapult in order to infect the city with the disease. This war tactic will have consequences that the Kipchak chieftain's mind cannot imagine. When the Italians and Kiev were infected with the disease, they also fled to their homeland, Genoa, Messina, and Venice. Between late 1347 and 1350, these three cities became the first centers on the European continent. Death. In Messina, people panicked, chased the plague-stricken sailors and fled themselves. Thus not only could they not save their lives, but they also spread the disease to other cities. In June 1348, an epidemic of the plague reached Paris. The plague was imported to the ports of southwest England that summer, possibly in conjunction with a batch of red wine from Bordeaux. The plague descended on London in early 1349 and reached Scotland in December, crossing the North Sea and reaching Scandinavia in 1350. From there, he headed south and east, and returning along the Volga to the homeland of the Tatars again. By 1352, the most severe period of the epidemic led to the past eruption. The eruption of the Lucky volcano in Iceland in 1783 led to climate change and a hunger crisis that affected not only Iceland, but the whole of Europe. This disaster could even be a catalyst on the way to the French Revolution. The impact of such disasters on the history of the world may be much greater than we thought. Lucky volcano is a volcano located in Iceland and is still active. The Lucky volcano, which exploded with a great impact in 1783, has created an amazing pile of basalt in the environment. June 8, 1783, the volcano began to erupt and continued until February 7, 1784. An estimated 8 million tons of hydrogen fluoride and 120 million tons of sulfur dioxide have been released into the atmosphere. This has caused the air pollution called Lucky smoke in Europe. The consequences of the eruption for Iceland were catastrophic. 20% to 25% of the population died from famine and fluoride poisoning. 80% of sheep, 50% of cattle, 50% of horses also got sick and died due to fluoride. The consequences of the catastrophic explosion in Europe were also catastrophic. The summer of 1783 was recorded as the hottest summer in Europe. There was such a thick layer of fog that the ships could not leave the port and could not transport. The Lucky volcano eruption caused a complete disaster, not only at the moment of its eruption, but also with its subsequent effects. The awareness of climate change due to volcanic eruptions today is based on the observation of the fog that appeared after the eruption of the Lucky in the past. In the history books, the years without summer, low agricultural harvest famine, and some of the rebellions appeared after the volcanic eruptions. The effects of the spring, which lasted about 8 months, remained severe for years. It was the coldest winter in 225 years. The people of Iceland, whose agricultural activity stopped, experienced a period of famine that lasted for 7 years. 9,350 people lost their lives, most of them from starvation. disaster, it was seen that volcanic eruptions are one of the most important causes of climate change in the world. These forgotten disasters of history remind us how fragile the past was. So what do you think about these disasters? Don't forget to share with us in the comments and like the videos, and subscribe to our channel to be informed about such videos. See you in the future videos.